Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second big weekend. We've got some great lessons tomorrow. It's algebra, which is absolutely key to the entire quantitative portion. But today, we've got critical reasoning. And critical reasoning is a really, really enjoyable lesson. I hope that you guys find that as well. A lot of people tell me that at the end of this lesson that they see critical reasoning in a different way. Okay? Now you might think, how can we see critical reasoning, all that differently? It's really just we read something and it's sort of, a logical sort of argument, and we strengthen it, we weaken it. But there are ways to think about this, ways to focus on this that are going to give you a tremendous advantage over the competition. So by the end of today, I'm going to ask you guys, once we're done today, I'm going to say, hey, are you seeing critical reasoning a little bit differently now? And I hope you're able to say yes. So here we go. Now, critical reasoning strategy is going to help you answer questions accurately, which we want, efficiently, of course, in not too much time, but also with confidence. Accurately, efficiently, but also with confidence. Because it's not enough for you to know the answer. It's not enough for you to get to the right answer in a reasonable amount of time. Yeah, sure, you know the right answer, you get there in a reasonable amount of time, but if you're not confident in your answer, this is when we run into difficulties in timing on the verbal section, is when people are not confident with that answer. Okay? And by the way, not being confident with that answer goes hand in hand with just doing a process of elimination, where all 5 answer choices, any of these could be right. All 5 of these. When you do that, when you go to the answer choices on a question like this, and it's just like, well, it could be any of these, you're not going to be that confident. Because you're going to feel like, well, maybe it's B, but, C has some merit as well. You're going to have confidence by using the right procedures here, the right techniques. So, accurately, efficiently, and with confidence. Critical reasoning strategy is going to help you out with just about everything, to be honest with you. Integrated reasoning is really a critical reasoning with tables and graphs and those sorts of things. Reading comprehension is critical reasoning with what? Several paragraphs, right? It's a big critical reasoning. And then data sufficiency is critical reasoning with numbers and number properties. And of course we have the AWA writing assessment, and the AWA is just a critical reasoning argument. So critical reasoning is really going to help you with everything. About the only thing I didn't mention here was sentence correction and problem solving, and you'll believe me when I tell you that critical reasoning impacts those as well. So really the entire exam has some connection to critical reasoning. We're going to do categorization and the SWAM method, right? In your book, it is the SWIM method. It is the SWIM method in the book, but we're going to go a little step above that. We're going to have what I call the SWAM method, okay? So that's where we're going to start. By the end of this lesson, you're going to approach all critical reasoning problems with one exception, with strategy and confidence, okay? I'll tell you what that exception is. You're like, oh no, one exception. Well, it's just that we're going to do that one later. We don't do that today, but otherwise, lots of confidence. This is a problem we're going to do in just a second, but I only want to mention to you that the stimulus, or we sometimes call this the argument. Stimulus is the most correct way to say it, because not every time that you have this paragraph do you actually have an argument. The difference is this. The stimulus could be just a collection of sentences. It could be an argument. An argument is when somebody has a point. Not every critical reasoning does somebody actually make a point in the stimulus. So you can call it an argument. I absolutely will not correct you. Okay, it's not the LSAT. You can call it an argument, and you'll be right 90% of the time. Anyway, stimulus is another way. You can call it the paragraph. We obviously here have a question stem, and we have answer choices. Approximately a third of the verbal section, which is no longer 12 to 14 problems, is it? It's more in the line of 10 to 12 problems. Okay, it's more in the line of we're doing 10 to 12 problems because while it is a third of the verbal section, the critical reasoning doesn't require quite as many questions as does sentence correction, even reading comprehension. So 10 to 12 of these. Each stimulus could be up to 125 words. The entire verbal section is adaptive, which doesn't mean a lot to you, except that it does mean that you should probably spend the most time in practice on the section that you are not as good at, because it does adapt as a whole. If you're not able to bring that, let's say, sentence correction around, really at all, that's going to limit the difficulty that you get in critical reasoning, reading comprehension. So if you don't want to have any limitations on the ability for you to score, then you don't want to have one type of question that's way down here, okay? Because if your sentence correction is down here, your critical reasoning could only be up here. Whereas if you raise the sentence correction, the critical reasoning difficulty will go up, which means your potential will go up as well. We're going to read the question stem first. And I'm glad that everybody that's here right now is here right now, because we're going to talk about something that's going to kind of frame the rest of the class. And that is, when you read that question stem first, you just want to know how to read the stimulus. It's not that big of a deal to read the question stem first, and if you don't, if you read the argument or the stimulus first, that'll work fine as well. But the reason why we recommend you read the question stem first is because you'll know when you're reading that argument, when you're reading that stimulus, you'll know what to do. So let's break this down into two categories. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to break critical reasoning down into two big categories, and then into 8 categories, and finally into 5 categories. Okay? So 2, and then 8, and then 5. And you'll see how all of those different breakdowns are meaningful. So the two different categories are normal and not normal. Normal and not normal. Okay? So that's our first breakdown. We're looking at questions that are normal, questions that are not normal. What does it mean for a question to be normal? It simply means that the question has a conclusion in the stimulus. That's all it means. And that you are going to focus on that conclusion. There is a conclusion in the stimulus, and you're going to focus on that conclusion. That's it. So why do we call this a normal question? Well, there's 2 reasons. First of all, we call it a normal question because about 2/3 of all of the critical reasoning questions are normal. So it's normal in the sense of being more, we could say, typical. It's normal in the sense of being more typical. About 1/3 of questions are not normal. It's also normal in the sense that normally, when you're making a statement, you have a point. Okay? Normally, people have a point. And that point is your conclusion. If you want someone to buy something, that's a conclusion. If you want someone to believe something you say, right? So buy this product is a conclusion. Believe that this football team will win. Believe it. That's a conclusion. When you want somebody to vote for somebody, vote for this candidate. That's a conclusion. When you want somebody to do something, okay? So I really think that you need to study on Tuesdays. That's a conclusion. So telling somebody what they should believe, what they should do, right? What they should buy, who they should vote for, those are all conclusions. And we seem to have conclusions most of the time, right? It's a rare person who just walks around saying things like, it's a beautiful day today. It's a Saturday. There's a little bit of snow falling. You know, it's like a Buddhist monk or something, that isn't walking around. We're all walking around trying to convince each other of different things, aren't we? We're all walking around trying to convince each other of things. And so that's why it's normal to have a conclusion, all right? So this is going to be SWAM. So you're going to see what these categories are in just a second, but that's going to be SWAM. And then the not normal type of question, simply no conclusion or not focus. You either no conclusion or not focus on the conclusion. Okay? No conclusion or don't focus on the conclusion. So your not normal type of question is going to be something where, you know, there may be a conclusion, possibly, mostly there isn't, but it's not your focus. So this is how we have two different types. How do we have 8 different types? Well, the normal questions are going to make the acronym SWAM. So that's 4 of them. And the not normal questions, and you'll see those on the next page, and the not normal questions form the acronym BIPP. BIPP. So that's how we get 8 categories. We have 4 categories of normal and 4 categories of not normal for a total of 8. Okay. Now, how do we get 5 categories? Well, it's really simple. All of these 2/3, all of these normal questions, 2/3 of the sentence of the critical reasoning, are all going to be approached in the same way. So the normal question, which encompasses 2/3, these are all going to be approached in the same way. These not normal questions, 4 different approaches. So 1 approach, 4 approaches for a total of 5. Okay? So 2 categories, normal, not normal. 8 categories, SWAM and BIP. 5 categories, 1 here, 4 over here. Okay? So we're almost done. This is the most difficult part of the lesson, and we're almost done with that most difficult part. So here comes the normal questions, as I call them. This is not in your book. Your book still has the acronym SWIM. We have critical reasoning 2.0, okay? We have critical reasoning advanced. So this is the SWIM, okay? Is there a correlation between that and question difficulty? Not at all. Absolutely not. Some of the most difficult questions you're going to find, Nicholas, are just like regular strengthened questions or, you know, assumptions or something like that. So there is no correlation in terms of difficulty. All right, let's jump on this one. So we have the normal question means to focus on the conclusion in the stimulus. That's all it means. When I call something a normal question, it means when you read the stimulus, you focus on that conclusion. Okay? Now, the normal types of questions are strengthen, weaken, assumption, and most useful to know in order to evaluate. This question type we will work on in lesson 9. Okay? So, normal question, focus on the conclusion in the stimulus, right? So a strengthen, you're going to add new information to support an existing, you guessed it, conclusion, right? So to strengthen, you're going to support an existing conclusion. To weaken, you're going to add new information that will undermine an existing conclusion. So you're going to support a conclusion, you're going to undermine a conclusion. You can see why our focus is on the conclusion, right? For an assumption question, you're going to provide information that is required by the argument, which of course means by the conclusion. Okay? And then most useful to know in order to evaluate, again, we're going to do that one in lesson 9, you're going to indicate the information that the argument is missing. So in other words, you're going to indicate the information that would be necessary for you to evaluate the conclusion. So for all of these, the conclusion is going to be your focus because that's what you're strengthening, that's what you're weakening, that's what requires the assumption, that's what you're trying to evaluate. It's all down to the conclusion. So that's where our focus is. We're going to use a 2-word code, and I have these slides already, so I'll send you these slides. So if you don't get everything down here, don't worry. because knowing that these aren't in the book, right, I'm going to send you these slides. So the normal question, we've got a 2-word code here, okay? So the first word in our 2-word code tells us what to do while reading the stimulus. So the first word is how to approach the stimulus. How do we approach the stimulus? Well, for all of these questions, the way to approach the stimulus, I use the word normal, okay? So for all of these questions, the way that you're going to approach the stimulus is you're going to focus on the conclusion. So that means that all 4 of these, the first word is normal. The second word is going to tell you what the correct answer must do. This equals what the correct answer must do. So what must the correct answer do? Well, for a normal strengthen, the correct answer must strengthen. For a normal weaken, the correct answer must weaken, right? Assumption, it's going to provide the needed information, and you can say most useful or you can say evaluate. So we have 4 different types of questions: normal strengthen, normal weaken, normal assumption, normal evaluate. Okay? So those 2 words tell me that when I read the stimulus, I'm going to focus on the conclusion. And when I read when I go to the answer choices, the answers must strengthen, weaken, provide the assumption, help me evaluate. So that's the 2-word code for, this is 2/3 of the questions right here. Okay? Now we're going to switch it, and we're going to look at the not normal questions. The not normal questions form the acronym BIPP, which is not a word like SWAM is. But, you know, here's what you've got. So not normal just means, look, the stimulus may lack a conclusion, and that in any case, the conclusion is not your focus. Your focus is not on the conclusion for these. So not normal questions include boldface, which you're going to describe the roles played by the portions in bold. So you will actually have 2 phrases, clauses, or sentences in bold, and you're going to describe the roles. So your focus is not on the conclusion, it's on the parts in bold. An inference question, the stimulus itself doesn't have a conclusion. An inference question has a set of facts, okay? So something like, it's the Saturday before Christmas, the weather is not very good, lots of people are out shopping, and now you're going to make a conclusion for that. Something like, therefore, it'll be hard to find a parking place at Walmart or something. So you're going to make a conclusion based on their statements. The conclusion is yours. It's the answer choice. That's what's different. A normal question, the conclusion is in the stimulus. An inference question, the conclusion is the answer choice. Okay? Paradox, there is no conclusion. Paradox, you're going to resolve the apparent conflict between 2 facts. So with a paradox, there's going to be 2 different things that appear to be incompatible. 2 things that appear to be incompatible, and you're somehow going to make those work. Okay, something's going to resolve those. You'll see what that is. And then the plan question is different than a conclusion, and here's how. With a conclusion, somebody's telling you what to do. So with a conclusion, I might say something like, you should study on Tuesday. I might say something like, you should take the GMAT before February. I might say something like, you should skip Christmas. In all of these cases, I'm telling you what to do. Okay? That means that that's a conclusion. A plan is when you've decided for yourself. When a person, a government, a company has decided what they're going to do, that's a plan. So if you say to me, hey David, you know what? I've decided that Tuesdays are a great day for me to study. I'm gonna put extra time in on Tuesdays. That's a plan. because you decided for yourself, okay? If a company has decided that they're going to offer, fake iPhones or something, that's a plan. If I say, you know what you should do? You should make some fake iPhones. That's a conclusion. Telling someone what to do is a conclusion. Deciding what to do for yourself is a plan. It's that simple. So a plan, you're going to focus on the plan that's proposed and the goal indicated. Because when somebody has a plan, they always have a goal. When somebody has a plan, they always have a goal. Okay? So the two-word code for the not normal questions, the first word is actually going to be the type of question. Because remember, this is how you approach the stimulus, right? So you're going to approach a bold-faced question a certain way. You're going to approach an inference question a different way, a paradox, a plan. So I'll show you different ways to approach those. So the first word for each of these not normal questions is the type of question. The second word tells us what the correct answer must do, right? So the second word is going to be describe the roles. Now I understand that's actually 5 words. It's not 2. Boldface, describe the roles. So it's, it's a phrase. Inference, the correct answer must be true. So you're going there. With a paradox, you have to resolve. And with a plan question, you're going to do something such as strengthen the plan or weaken the plan, etc. So plan strengthen would be one type, plan weaken would be one type. And that's it. That's the most difficult part. That's the most difficult part of the lesson right there. From here, it's all going to be good to go. Okay? So we have these normal questions where you're going to focus on the conclusion. You're going to strengthen or that conclusion, weaken that conclusion, provide the assumption, help evaluate that conclusion. Or with not normal questions, there's not really a conclusion in the stimulus, or it's not your focus. So you're going to look at the bold face, you're going to describe those roles. You're going to do inference, pick out the one that must be true. The paradox, you're going to resolve it. And for a plan, you're going to strengthen it, weaken it, etc. Okay? And as I said, I do have these slides for you in case anybody didn't get all of those down. You're going to find this to be a lot more straightforward than it appeared in those moments. Now, it can be said that what distinguishes experts from novices is experts know what to pay attention to and what to ignore. And this is going to be especially true on critical reasoning. We're going to pay attention to the evidence and the conclusion. And we're going to, if not ignore, we're going to give less attention to the context or background. So this is number 2 on page 32. And what I would love for you guys to do is either just look at my screen and not look at your book, or if you are looking at the book, cover up your answers until we've analyzed this argument. The biggest mistake that people make early on with critical reasoning is they spend so much time with the incorrect answers, right? There are 5 answers, 4 of which are incorrect. If you go to the answer choices sort of immediately, you're spending most of your day with false information, right? It's as if you were watching a certain television news station all day long and you were just being inundated with fake news. It's just fake news after fake news. So, and fill in the blank, whatever TV station you want to put in there. I don't have one in mind. You fill in the blank, okay? It's totally up to you. But you're looking at all of this, these answer choices that are incorrect. The onion, there you go. The onion. You know what's really funny, Mrgasha? 15 years ago, maybe even more, maybe 16 years ago or something, I was teaching high school, and I didn't know it was an article from The Onion. And I read this article to the kids because I thought it was a great piece of journalism. It said how you could tell that it was spring because all the UPS drivers had switched from long pants to shorts. And I thought it was like a sociological, I thought, yeah, this is exactly. So, the UPS driver, that's, now you know it's spring. It turned out it was from The Onion. So I was guilty before anybody else. I was guilty of falling victim to fake news like maybe 17 years ago, back when The Onion was mostly the only fake news. So let's cover this one up. Let's start with the question stem right here, okay? Which of the following, if true, would strengthen the medical doctor's argument. Okay, we're going to most strengthen this medical doctor's argument. So, what is the two-word code, please? What is my two-word code for what this question is going to have me do? Nicholas, I love the all caps. I love the all caps. There you go, Murgasha. There we go. I could tell you were looking for the S. The W and the S are so close to each other, right? And that's really, it's kind of a parable for the fact that strengthening and weakening are very, very, very close on critical reasoning. The same way that the W and the S are close on the on your keyboard. Normal strengthen. Sebastian, Nicholas, Murgasha, Kim, everybody's right. It's a normal strengthen. Normal strengthen. So this means focus on the conclusion and strengthen it. Okay? We could do this. So obviously the first thing we want to do, we want to read that stimulus. We want to identify the conclusion. I actually have 6 really easy ways, 6, for you to identify the conclusion. The first 4 of these 6 we're going to talk about today right here. So can you go ahead and read this? Can anybody tell me the first 3 words of the conclusion? Can anybody tell me the first 3 words? David, what a great question you've asked. So let's deal with David's question. Sebastian, Murgasha, Matthew, exactly. You guys have the conclusion. The conclusion's right here. Therefore, we should restructure the workday to allow people flexibility in scheduling. So that's exactly the conclusion. Now, David has an excellent question for us. How do you know this is normal? Because it says argument. So what I do, David, is I eliminate the 4 not normal categories. Okay, so first of all, B, right? B-I-P-P. So B, nothing's in boldface. I mean, this doesn't count. Dr. Larson doesn't count. So it's not boldface. So B's gone. Okay, an inference question, you draw the conclusion, right? Well, in this case, the medical doctor has an argument. So the medical doctor has a conclusion, not you. Okay, so the I is gone. Paradox. With a paradox question, you're trying to explain something, not strengthen it. So paradox is gone. Plan. A plan is when somebody has decided what to do, okay? Now, I want you guys to think about, I don't know if you know the news, but the U.S. government, as far as I know, is currently shut down, right? So listen, to have an argument is not to have a plan, right? Right now, what we have is an argument, not a plan, okay? So somebody having an argument means a conclusion. It doesn't mean a plan. So there is no boldface, no inference, no paradox, no plan. Therefore, it's normal, okay? So that's one way, David. A second way to look at it is this. Anytime somebody uses the word strengthen, it's either going to be a normal strengthen or a plan strengthen. That's it. Normal strengthen or plan strengthen. Those are your only 2 possibilities. An argument's not a plan, so normal strengthen it is. Okay? Does that help? The only thing we're going to do for strengthening is normal, which means argument, or plan, which means plan, and there's no plan. Let's identify the conclusion in 4 different ways. So the first thing is conclusion language. Obvious conclusion language. I call it obvious. And that's going to be the word therefore. Therefore is pretty obvious, isn't it? When somebody says therefore, they're wrapping it up, right? What comes after therefore? Therefore, vote for my candidate. Therefore, buy this product, right? They're all always got some kind of a conclusion. So therefore, you can go to the reading comprehension book. You can go to page 30 in the reading comprehension book. It's book 7, and there is a list, a table of transition words. And that's a great place for you to find some more conclusion language. So that would be, for example, therefore, thus, in conclusion, consequently, we must conclude, anything like that. So an obvious conclusion word means we have the conclusion. Number 2, let's talk about a call for action. How about the word should? That's a call for action. The word should always indicates a conclusion. It's my favorite word in critical reasoning. My 2 favorite words in critical reasoning are only, which we'll talk about later, and should. Anytime somebody says should, that's a conclusion. Because remember, a conclusion is telling someone else what to do. A plan is deciding for yourself what to do. A conclusion is telling someone else what to do. And that's what should is. Should is always telling somebody what to do. Like the less you can use the word should in your life, probably the better friend you are. You know what I mean? You know, that if you're using the word should all the time, you might be sort of like an amateur, film critic. You know, you might be sort of an amateur restaurant critic. If you're using the word should all the time, you could be a little bit judgy. Just look into it. It's possible. Number 3, premise language adjacent. Whoa, what's that about? Premise language adjacent. So here's what premise language is. Because, for, and since. The words because, for, and since indicate to you that you have a premise. Okay? Because it's snowing outside. It's snowing outside is a premise. Okay? So whenever you have one of these 3 words, and again, look at the reading comprehension book for that, page 30, for that, that table, and look at some more premise words. When you have a premise, what happens is this. The premise word and the premise will always be together. You're always going to say because and then some kind of a fact, some kind of evidence. Because the lights are on. Because it's December. Because it's snowing outside. Because Pat Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. Whatever it is. You're going to have your premise word, you're going to have your premise. The conclusion will always come either right before or right after that. Okay? So when you see the word because, here's what I want you to know. What follows the word because is not going to be the conclusion. But the conclusion is going to be right there. So when you see a premise word, look for the conclusion because it's going to be there. Okay? The Kansas City Chiefs have a good chance of winning the football game Sunday because Pat Mahomes is a great quarterback. Right? Or because it's snowing outside, you should drive more slowly. So when you see the word because, look for the conclusion to be right there. And then finally we have the why test. The why test. So the why test is the best way to know you actually have the conclusion. The best way. So check it out. What you do is you ask why about the conclusion, and the rest of the argument will answer. You ask why about the conclusion, and the rest of the argument answers. So what do I mean? Why should we restructure? You guys have told me, Sebastian, Mrgasha, Matthew have told me that this is the conclusion right here. Okay? Now I want to test that. It looks like it is because we've got the conclusion language, we've got the call for action, we've got the whole thing. But here's how we test it. Why should we restructure the workday to allow flexibility in scheduling? Well, because sleep deprivation is the cause of many social ills and most people suffer from it. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. If you ask why about the conclusion, the rest of the argument will answer. But if you ask why about a premise, there is no answer. Okay? Why is sleep deprivation the cause of many social ills? There's no answer here. You may know that without sleep, you don't get rid of the stress hormone cortisol, right? So people are stressed if they don't have sleep. You may know that without sleep, people's IQ actually drops by between 10 and 20 points. You may know these things about sleep. You may know how important sleep is, but it's not what you know. The argument doesn't say. When the argument gives you no support, that's a premise. Okay, that's the difference. A conclusion is supported by the rest of the argument. A premise, you just have to accept. You just have to accept. Okay? So when they tell you that sleep deprivation is the cause of many social ills, just nod your head. Okay, that's fine. But when they tell you we should restructure the workday for flexibility, you say, hold on a second, let's investigate this. So if it's a conclusion, it has support, and therefore we can challenge it. If it's a premise, there is no support, so you must just accept it. Okay? So if they told you something like this, all females play tennis. That's what that stands for. If they said all females play tennis, okay, and you're going like, wait a minute, that's not true. I know plenty of women that don't play tennis, right? All females play tennis. That's not true. You can't say that on the exam because you can't argue with facts they give you. You just have to accept it. So if they say all females play tennis, for the next 2 minutes, you're just going to have to agree. So if we say something like, you know, Mary is female, you're just going to have to accept that one as well. All females play tennis, Mary is female, you're going to have to just accept that one as well because there is no support, okay? But if they then say that Mary plays tennis, now this you can argue with because it's the conclusion. Oh yeah? Why does Mary play tennis? Oh, because all females play tennis and Mary's female. An argument has support, and therefore it can be questioned. Isn't that interesting? An argument has support and can be questioned, whereas a premise has no support, so you must just accept it. So the why test is another way to find the conclusion and is the best way. Okay? I've got 2 more for you as we go. Now, step 1 is to read the argument and identify the conclusion. We've done that. We've read the argument, the conclusion's here in red. Okay? We now write that conclusion down. Okay? Still step 1, but we write that conclusion down. So write the conclusion down. Now look, you could abbreviate but never paraphrase. The conclusion is king, and every word matters. So you must write down what is said, not what you think is said. So, should restructure the workday to allow flexibility. That's what I'm writing down. Some people tell me that this conclusion is people work too many hours. Well, I totally agree with you that people work too many hours. But this conclusion doesn't say that. This conclusion says restructure the workday to allow flexibility. So write down what is actually said, not what you think or hope or wish was said. Okay? So write down what is actually said. Now, step 2, and don't worry, all 5 steps are written down at the end. Step 2 is to next identify the two parts of the argument, which are the evidence and the context. The evidence you do focus on, the context you don't. Okay? The evidence will provide you with the facts, figures, or reasoning that supports the argument. So I'm going to make this sentence 1, and I'm going to call this sentence 2. Okay? Sentence 1, it starts here. Sentence 2 starts here. Type into the chat box for me, which of these two is the evidence for this argument? Which of these two is the primary thing that I should be focused on when I think about whether we should allow flexibility? What do you think? Type in a 1 or a 2 on this for me. I want to thank you, Jorge and Amanda, Jessica, Garrett, Matt, Nicholas, and Kim. This is what everyone types in. And so naturally, the answer, of course, is sentence 2. So why? Why? The first sentence seems to give us all the information, doesn't it? The first sentence has the social ills, it has the irritability, it has the impaired decision-making. The first sentence is golden, except it's not. In fact, the second sentence is the evidence. Which word in the second sentence makes that important? Which word, can you look at that second sentence? Which word really, really turns that into some good evidence for me? Which word makes that into some good evidence? Well, people's important. People's important, David, but for me, I think it is the word most. I think Jessica and Matt and Kim on this one, I think it is the word most. Because most has a meaning, doesn't it? Doesn't most have a meaning? It means more than 50%. Right? It means more than 50%, most. So more than 50% of people suffer from sleep deprivation. Whoa, that's crazy. If I said to you more than 50% of people have, I don't know, 3 arms, you'd be like, that's crazy. If it's more than 50% of people do anything, that's a big deal, right? And if more than 50% of people aren't getting enough sleep, that's huge. It's huge, right? So obviously, we've got to do something about this. Now, what about that first sentence, right? We've got all these details and everything. But what if nobody suffered from sleep deprivation? Sleep deprivation is the worst thing ever. I get it. I totally get it. But what if nobody suffers from it? I've discovered a terrible disease called GMAT hyperfocusism. Terrible disease called GMAT hyperfocusism. Okay? This is defined as a person who's studying so hard for the GMAT that they ignore their friends, their hobbies, their family, right? It's a terrible disease. What if only 4 people in the world suffer from GMAT hyperfocusism? I mean, it might be you. You might be one of them, right? So, of course, you've got to focus on the GMAT. But if you focus on the GMAT to the extent of not eating or sleeping or whatever, it's a terrible disease. But what if only 4 people suffer from it? We're not going to change everybody for 4 people. That's what's going on here. Sleep deprivation can be as bad as you want it to be. But if it's not suffered by most people, if we don't know that a lot of people suffer from this, then we're not going to make such a big change as this. Okay? So the evidence and the conclusion are both written down. So we write down most people suffer from sleep deprivation. We write down should restructure the workday. So I'd love for you to write these 2 things down Even on test A, I'd love it if you wrote down the evidence and the conclusion. It's very helpful. Now, what about this other part? What about the part that was sentence 1? What about the part that's now in green? And by the way, this is my color coding. Green is the context, background. Blue is the evidence, and red is the conclusion. Okay? So this makes the first sentence context or background information. So what role does the context play? Well, the context is there simply to introduce the argument and to make sure that the GMAT is not primarily a vocabulary test. Let's say you didn't know what the words sleep deprivation mean. Ah, great question, Jessica. Great question. I'm going to answer that in just a couple seconds. You actually are like 30 seconds ahead of me. Jessica may very well have a hot tub time machine because Jessica's 30 seconds ahead of me. So sleep deprivation, let's say we didn't know what sleep deprivation means. Let's say this was Latin, sleepus deprivatus or something, right? So let's say that was Latin and you didn't know what it meant. It doesn't matter because the context is letting you know, hey, sleep deprivation is whack, right? We don't want sleep deprivation. So even if you didn't know what sleep deprivation is, the context is going to tell you that sleep deprivation is a bad thing. You guys get what I'm saying? The context makes it so that you're not dependent on knowing any one particular word or phrase because the context will let you know if it's good or bad, if it's now or in the past, right? If it's big or if it's small. The context is going to let you know these things. So, is it always in this order? Well, we never say always on the GMAT, Jessica, but we do say that at least 80+% of the time, normal questions will be in the order of context, evidence, conclusion. So, the fifth way to identify the conclusion, brought to you by Jessica, the fifth way to identify the conclusion is the conclusion is almost always the last sentence of the argument. Okay, so the fifth way to identify the conclusion is to close your eyes and point to the bottom of the page, and there it'll be. The people that write this exam are nice. Look at this. They give you this background information first. Hey, you know, I've been thinking about sleep deprivation. Listen, man, sleep deprivation makes people irritable. They make bad decisions, right? And I'm like, whoa. Sleep deprivation doesn't sound good. And then my friend goes, hey, most people suffer from it. And I say, wow, it's not very good. Most people suffer from it. We've got to do something about it, right? You're bringing me along. You're bringing me along here. I'm invested. You know, sleep deprivation is junk. People suffer from it. What are we going to do? You know what? Let's restructure the workday to allow people flexibility. Yeah, let's do that. So they structure this in such a way that it actually builds on it the way that, you know, you would want your friend to do. So they're very nice. The people that write this exam on the verbal side, let's not talk quantitative, are nice people. They're good people. So check the bottom for the conclusion, okay? So now, this is the most important step right now. I call this a mantra. You're going to create a, let me try to say that a little bit better, a mantra. I call this a mantra, okay? From the evidence and the conclusion. The reason why I call this a mantra is because you repeat it over and over as you go through the answers. So you look at answer choice A and you say your mantra. Does it match? You look at B and you say your mantra and see if it matches. And then C, does it match? So you don't go to the answer choices with all of this. You go to the answer choices with something in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 words that tells you what? The mantra is what is required to bring together the conclusion and the evidence. So for a strengthened question, you're trying to bring together the conclusion and the evidence, right? So a mantra tells you what is required, what the correct answer must do to bring those together. So can anybody type this in for me? What would bring this together? Most people suffer from sleep deprivation, should restructure the workday to allow flexibility. What would bring those two things together? Let's get some answers in that chat box for me. What would bring those two things together? Kim, Jessica, Sebastian, Rob, such great answers. Such great answers. I'm going to pick Rob and Sebastian over the other two because of one particular word. What's the most important word in the conclusion? What is the single most important word in the conclusion? It's in Rob's and it's in Sebastian's, but not there it is, Kim. Now Kim has it in there as well. Flexibility. Okay? So Kim says restructuring the workday will help sleep deprivation. Absolutely. But what does restructuring mean? You know, you could restructure the workday so everybody has to go to sleep has to go to work at 10 p.m. Well, that's not going to help sleep deprivation because they've done studies and shift workers have higher rates of cancer because being up during the nighttime means that you don't get the right sleep during the day because it's like bright outside, and sleep prevents cancer. Okay, it's one thing. Sleep definitely prevents cancer. Forget about irritability. They've certainly shown that people who are sleep deprived, you know, have higher rates of cancer. So anyway, restructuring the workday could mean forcing people to work all night, and that's not going to help with sleep deprivation. But flexibility, that's the word. Okay? The word is flexibility. Okay? So the mantra I created is this, folks. More flexibility equals more sleep. Okay? Rob, really close. Rob has absolutely got that one. With flexibility, more people would sleep. There it is. Okay? Bingo. All right? Sebastian, more flexibility in work schedule would reduce sleep deprivation. Absolutely perfect. Okay? And for Jessica, Kim, and Matthew, really great. Just remember, the point of the argument has to be in there as well. And in this case, the point is the flexibility. So now all we do at this point is we simply take this to the answer choices. You want to talk about simple. All you have to do now is simply match this to the correct answer. So let's do it. So A, the primary cause of sleep deprivation is overwork. Does that say more flexibility equals more sleep? No. There's nothing about flexibility. B, employers would get more sleep, employees would get more sleep if they had greater latitude in scheduling. What does greater latitude mean? Flexibility. They would get more sleep if they had greater latitude. That's the answer. Done. Okay? Answer choice B. If you want to try some fun drills with critical reasoning, right? And throughout the rest of today, we're going to develop our mantras. We're going to work on our mantras. You're going to get good at it. If you want to practice this mantra technique versus process of elimination, which process of elimination, not as efficient, not as accurate, takes more time, you're spending too much time with the wrong answers, okay, all that stuff. If you want to be better at creating your mantra and recognizing the correct answer, then don't read the other three. So when you get to the right answer, stop, draw a line under it, don't read the rest, okay? because now I'm not doing process of elimination because I didn't read these three. I'm doing process of recognition because I said this is what I'm looking for and here it is. Okay, now you may end up getting this wrong, but then you'll go back and say, what was wrong with my mantra? What should I have written differently? Why did I not do that? And by the way, look, if you have nothing else to do for a mantra, just put the key words from the conclusion and the key words from the premise together. To me, the key words are sleep deprivation in the premise and flexibility in the conclusion. So flexibility equals more sleep. If you have nothing else to do to reach for, take the key words from both of those, put them together, and that's your mantra. Okay? So seriously now, if you want to practice it this way, don't read all 5 answers unless E is the answer. If C is the answer, stop there to help yourself in this process. So here are the steps to the mantra for a normal strengthened question. Of course, you're going to read the question stem first, right? Read the question stem first, and then you know it's a normal strengthen. Step 1 is to read the stimulus. Step 2 is to identify the main conclusion and write it down. So far, so easy. No decision making, just recognition, right? You've already got 5 ways to identify the conclusion. You're going to get a 6th one here in a minute. Find the evidence that supports the conclusion. Here's a secret. The evidence is usually touching the main conclusion, right? And here's a second secret. If you ask the question why, the evidence is usually the first answer. Why should we have flexibility in scheduling? Because most people suffer from sleep deprivation. Oh, okay. That's the evidence, okay? You would not say, why should we have more flexibility? Because sleep deprivation makes people irritable. You see how that feels like you've missed a step there? The big one is number 4. This is where you might need a little bit of your own brain power. The rest of this is totally automatic. Your brain can be an autopilot, except for step 4. Create a mantra based on what the answer choice must say or do. So think about it. What's going to bring these two things together? Now, you can be as simple as conclusion words and most important words in the conclusion and in the premise and put them together. So create that mantra, though, the best you can. And then step number 5 should be the easiest step of all. Simply take that mantra to the answers and pick the one that matches. And people tell me that when they use this technique, that the correct answer appears to be highlighted, appears to be in bold, appears to jump out. So hopefully that'll be the same way for you. Okay? So remember, normal questions are not primarily a process of elimination. They're best addressed by analyzing the argument and creating the mantra before moving on. Don't spend all of your time, especially with normal questions, don't spend your time with the incorrect answers. Let's have you guys try this for yourselves. It's going to be problem number 4 on page 37. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, but first, together, we look at the question stem, right? Question stem first. So read that question stem. What's my 2-word code? What's my 2-word code going to be right here? That's it. That's it, David. That's it, Sebastian. That's it, Matt. We have another normal strengthen. That's it. Another normal strengthen. So this is question number 4. In your book, it's page 37. It's also on this screen. I'm putting 2 minutes on the timer for you. Okay? 2 minutes. Number 4, page 37. Conclusion, evidence, mantra, correct answer. You've got it. All right, take a few more seconds. I just wanted you to see what 2 minutes looked like. Take a few more seconds. All right, more than half. There we go. 8/12, 2/3. 2/3 with 3/4 with the correct answer. By the way, this is why donuts are served in dozens. Things like cookies are served in dozens. Because 12 divides by 2, 3, 4, 6, right? So if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 people, you can divide up the cookies evenly. If cookies were sold in tens, that's only 2 and 5, right? So 2 people and 5 people. So 12 divides by all sorts of things. 10 out of 12 now. 10 out of 12 people with the correct answer. So we're approaching 80 to 90% with the right answer. Really great job on this, guys. So what is the conclusion? Well, let's start with but this cannot be true. What is but this cannot be true? It's a hard transition. I refer to it as a negation. It's also the 6th way to identify the conclusion. So we have conclusion language, we have the command words, we have the premise words, we have the why test, right? So we have the command, the conclusion, the premise, the why test. We have the fact that the conclusion is almost always the last. And now we have a negation. So look at this. But this cannot be true is a negation, meaning that whatever comes before it cannot be the conclusion or the evidence. The portion before the negation must be context. So see how all this is now in green? Or background information that has only been stated, listen to this, in order to be negated. It's context or background information that has been stated in order to be negated. Right? So what do I mean? So let's say next week we're getting into sentence correction. And I'm talking to you about sentence correction, and I'm talking about eliminate the clutter, and I'm talking about decision points, and suddenly I go, but this cannot be true. And you're like, wait a second, David. Why would you be giving us all this and then say, but this cannot be true? Are you trying to punk us here? Well, sentence correction, you look at but it can't be true. No, what you're doing is, when an author attributes an opinion to someone else, look for the negation. Okay? Look at this. This author goes, opponents of peat harvesting in this country argue. It's a straw man. You're setting somebody else up. Opponents of the peat harvesting in this country argue, blah, 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 but this cannot be true. Okay? So when you see someone attribute to someone else, look for that negation to come in. And realize that no person is ever going to give you their evidence or their conclusion and then say it can't be true. Other examples are yet, however, but, on the other hand, things like that. Okay? So as soon as you see that negation, and it comes up remarkably frequently. I thought, oh, this negation thing, this is never going to come up, right? Yeah, 25% of all questions that I've seen have negations. So look for this and realize that whatever this stuff is you just read doesn't matter very much. Okay? You can just sum this up. Some people think that this is going to be harmful to the water. Boom. But it's not true, according to this person. Okay? So negation means evidence and conclusion comes after. The evidence is in Ireland, where peat has been harvested for centuries, the water supply is not contaminated. The conclusion, of course, is we can safely proceed with the harvesting of peat. Can anybody tell me what you came up with as a mantra here? Peat has been harvested in Ireland and there's not contamination. We can safely harvest peat. Anybody give me a mantra? What's going to bring these two things together? It's sort of like me saying that I just had a student get a 740. So you can too, right? I just heard from a student 2 days ago from a class I had a couple months ago, got a 740, very excited about that, as you can imagine. So this student got a 740, so can you. Right? Nicholas has it, guys. Nicholas is right on this. So if I'm saying to you, this other guy got a 740, so can you. What does his score have to do with you? What does Ireland have to do with our country? Right? Okay, so Sebastian, you're definitely on the right track with that. It's been safe before, so it's okay for us. You're well on the right track. Okay? Matthew, safely harvest peat and not contaminate water. You're well on the right track, and Kim as well. You guys are all on that track. But Nicholas has the most important word, which is the word Ireland. Okay? If I'm telling you that a previous student of mine scored well, and you can score well too, there must be something about you two that makes that connection. Otherwise, I'm just half-baked, right? I'm just a little bit weird. So yeah, this guy did well, you can too. Well, why? I don't know. But if it's like this, you're both using the same tactics. You both have the same approach to, whatever. As long as there's a similarity. Well, that's what we need here. We need a similarity between Ireland. Evidence for Ireland applies to our country too. That's my mantra, okay? So Nicholas got a little bit shorter than mine. So that's points for that, okay? And then we go to the correct answer, and we just say, hey, which one of these tells us that Ireland is like our country? Well, it's got to be answer choice B. The original ecology of the peat harvesting areas of Ireland was virtually identical to that of the undisturbed wetlands of this country. There it is. Ireland, this country, identical, good to go. Okay? So, answer choice A is far too general, right? Answer choice C is a popular answer. The activities of other industries are likely to have adverse effects as well. So what? So we should get in there first? You know what I mean? You know that your friend is going to get punched by some other guy after school. So what do? You punch him, during lunchtime? So, well, he's going to get beat up anyway. I might as well get a couple shots in, right? It's weird. It's weird. Just because something else is going to have adverse effects doesn't mean you want to get in there first. Let me get those adverse effects going. The peat resources of this country are far larger than some countries. Okay, but is that Ireland? Because our evidence is only Ireland. And then answer choice D doesn't link Ireland to our country. It just tells us how awesome Ireland is. Okay? Rarely ever snows in Ireland. Did you guys know that? Rarely ever snows. The Gulf Stream. It's because of the Gulf Stream. Okay, you get a little bit of snow in Scotland, but that's further north and further from the Gulf Stream. I'm going to do one more of these with you guys because I just want to make sure that we've totally got this. This is a bonus question, not in your books. Okay, so it's on screen. It's a bonus. Look at this. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the claim above? A claim is not a plan. So we're going to support something, and we're supporting a claim. That's a normal strengthen. As soon as you're supporting or strengthening, look for a plan. And I'll show you what a plan means in about 5 minutes. All right, let's look at this. Bonus question right here. 2 minutes on the timer. You may take a little longer. A through E. All right, keep working. That's 2 minutes, but you keep working. All right, this is a 2-horse race. The correct answer and one of the trap answers. We got a 2-horse race here. Let's get a mantra and let's see what's going to happen. So, normal strengthen. Nevertheless, check it out, folks. You get to try it already. Look at that. We've already got a negation. Nevertheless, greater energy savings might be realized without daylight savings. Therefore, daylight savings should be abandoned. So this is all just going to be context. The evidence is greater energy savings, and the conclusion is, therefore, daylight savings should be abandoned. So greater energy savings might be gained. Daylight saving time should be abandoned. Put those two things together. My mantra is basically abandon daylight savings time and save energy, right? So let's find the answer that tells us that abandoning daylight savings time will save energy. Answer choice D. Answer choice D. We got more than 50% with the right answer just before I said D. So good job on that. With the advent of air conditioning devices, the energy curve in the summer months means daylight savings time causes a net increase in U.S. electricity costs. So if daylight savings causes an increase in those costs, then abandoning daylight savings time should what? Should save some of those costs, right? So daylight savings causes an increase, so abandoning should help out with that. The big trap answer is C. Within the U.S., daylight savings is already not observed in Arizona and Hawaii, as well as numerous U.S. territories. Okay? So C is the big one there. Why does that, forget about, let's say that you didn't go for the evidence at all. Let's say that you weren't even thinking about the energy savings. Why does answer choice C point you in the direction of abandoning daylight savings? It doesn't. It just says that these two particular places, Arizona and Hawaii, Hawaii, by the way, is what? Tropical. And what do we know about the tropics? The amount of daylight doesn't really change in the tropics, right? Hawaii basically has 12 hours of daylight every day versus Alaska, which has 23 hours or 3 hours, depending on, depending on what we're talking about. They will not make a vampire movie set in Hawaii because it doesn't get dark there the way there was that vampire movie in Alaska, because it's dark for 3 months. So Hawaii doesn't need daylight savings, folks. And Arizona is just, repeat after me, Arizona is weird. The word you're looking for is weird. Arizona is strange. Hawaii's tropical, Arizona's weird. So this doesn't point us towards abandoning daylight savings time when the other 48 states use daylight savings time. So I don't know. Answer choice C has no appeal for me. It really has no appeal. Answer choice E has more appeal. The more daylight savings becomes embedded in technology like computers and media, the higher the cost will change back, right? So this is telling us, something about daylight savings time and getting rid of it, but it doesn't tell us whether to get rid of it. Answer choice E just tells us if you're going to get rid of it, do it now, okay? So what are your questions on this? What's the level of difficulty on a question like this? For me, this is kind of right up the middle, Matthew. This one's a right up the middle. I mean, I've seen enough people answer this enough to know that this is that 50th percentile kind of level. So 50th percentile kind of level on this one. All right, let's do a different type of question. Oh, we may have one more question coming in. But before we hit the break, I definitely want to do something just a little bit different. Shouldn't the mantra involve saving money rather than energy? Greater energy savings, Nicholas. Greater energy savings. So, I mean, saving energy does mean saving money, but Nicholas, I'm going with this part right here. Greater energy savings. All right, let's try something just a little bit different. Listen, I should know our electric bill went right up once it became winter. So I think the more energy, definitely the more money. I totally agree with that. Let's go to page 99, question 34. Plus, it costs a certain amount to turn on these studio lights, you know? I mean, I never get that seasonal depression that other people get in Vermont because it's, you know, so cloudy, because I spend several hours a week under basically tanning lamps here. I mean, these studio lights are pretty bright, guys. Pretty bright. Let's look at number 34 on page 99. Look at this question stem and tell me what's different. What's different about this question stem, guys? Which of the following, if true, provides the strongest reason to expect that the proposed line of cell phones will be successful in regaining market share? What do we have here that's different? So Matthew, almost all of these questions will say if true. Basically, all that means is that you're not supposed to question the answers. You're supposed to hypothetically, right? You're supposed to hypothetically. To expect, you're getting in a good direction now, David. To expect, we're moving in a good direction here. Strongest reason? No. You'll often find that. No, the key is up here. Look at that. So I may very well have hidden the correct. It's a plan question, guys. It's a plan question because look, it is a proposed line of cell phones. Okay, a proposal is a plan. A strategy is a plan. So this is one way to know we have a plan question. It's a proposed line of cell phones. I'm not telling you what to do. You have figured out what you're going to do. You have a proposal. And then, more importantly, and some of you might be fans of that game where you kick a round ball with your feet or with your head, not your hands, right? You know what game I'm talking about. And when you score a point, you score a goal. You score a goal. A plan question has a goal, okay? So that's where the to expect comes in. That's why I said David was on the right track with to expect. This type of question has a goal. The plan question is the only type that has a goal. Look, the stuff we've just been looking at, nobody's had a goal. Look at this. Look at the question we just did. Look at the question stem. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports? Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports? That's not a goal, right? There's no goal here. Strongly supports the claim. There's no goal. Look back at this one. Will be successful in regaining market share. That's a goal, right? That's a goal right there. That's like the Atlanta Football Club winning the MLS championship right there. That's the goal. So when you have a goal, it's a plan. The plan is going toward the goal. Please read this stimulus and you'll see what I mean. There's no conclusion. There's no should. There's no must. Right? There's only a plan and a goal. Okay. So as we're checking this out, you can see the plan. It's right here. Global Tech has proposed a new line of cell phones with the capability of synchronizing various household appliances. That's their plan. Yo, we've got a phone that's going to run your computer, your light switch, and even your toaster, right? Can you imagine using your phone to control your toaster? The app for this would no doubt be called iToast, right? The app would be called iToast. To which one of my students replied to me, yes, but since you're not there, you're not watching the toast, it's I burnt the toast, okay? If you're controlling your toaster with your phone, that's some burnt toast, and it's guaranteed. Absolutely. So the app for this is called I Burnt. Now, the goal is given in the question stem, right there. It's also given right here, okay, in an attempt to regain market share. So the plan is to have new features, but listen, don't stop there. Some people tell me the plan here is new features. No, because they get very specific. The capability of synchronizing various household appliances. They are very specific that it's the synchronizing the appliances that's the deal here, okay? So that's what we've got. That's the plan, and the goal is to regain market share. Now, there's a goal. There's a goal that the proposed line of cell phones is hoping to achieve. It's a plan question. Okay, so let's jump to this. Plan strengthen. You're going to strengthen the plan. How do we know it's a strengthen? Because it's the strongest reason to expect they will be successful. So if they're going to be successful, we're strengthening their plan. Okay? When you strengthen the plan, there's no actual conclusion. There's no should. There's nothing like that. So you bring the conclusion. Plan questions require that you supply an automatic conclusion. Something that will help you focus on the plan and the goal. You supply the automatic conclusion. Okay? So the automatic conclusion for a plan strengthen is the plan will achieve the goal. Memorize that. It's easy. It's easy. You're trying to strengthen the plan. So clearly you need the plan to achieve the goal. That's it. The plan will achieve the goal. You fill in the plan, you fill in the goal, that's your mantra. Once you fill that in, that's your mantra. So your mantra is whatever the plan is going to achieve whatever the goal is. Okay? So let's look at this. The plan to control appliances with a cell phone will achieve the goal of regaining market share. So your mantra is offering phones that control appliances, that's the plan, will, that's the will achieve, regaining market share, and that's the goal. The plan will achieve the goal. The plan, controlling those appliances with your phone. The goal, regaining market share. So my mantra is this. So now I go to the answer choices, and so do you. 1 minute on the timer. Pick the correct answer using that mantra. 1 minute. Poll is open. There we go. Okay, give me a yes if you guys agree with me on this. When you have that mantra in place, picking the correct answer is pretty straightforward. Do you guys agree? When you have that mantra in place, picking that correct answer can be... Now, a couple of you picked the wrong answer, so maybe let me tell you what the answer is. But doesn't it help? It helps, right? It helps. So in this case, now I haven't told you one... I'm going to tell you one crucial thing about the plan question, so maybe a couple of you might change your answer. Make sure your answer choice reaches the goal. Look at your answer choice. Does your answer choice regain market share? Does your answer choice tell me that people want this feature? Does your answer choice tell me that people want this, that they're going to buy this phone? Okay? Because with a plan question, the goal is king. The goal is the key. All right? So, the correct answer is answer choice E. In today's economy, the new time-saving ability to remotely control appliances is being demanded by more and more consumers. Now, I can absolutely understand why people pick A, why they pick C. Engineers now have a way of doing this. The number of appliances that can be remotely controlled has tripled, especially answer choice C. Why would they triple the number of appliances if this wasn't something people wanted, right? Well, that's not nearly as direct. Think about what you have to do with answer choice C. You have to fill in a lot of gaps there. You have to come in and say, well, the only reason they would triple the number of appliances is if people wanted it. That's not necessarily the case. Maybe they're tripling the number of appliances because they think someday people might want it, right? I mean, there have been such things as failures in business. There have been failures in business before, right? Even casinos have gone bankrupt, and that's like printing money. If we look at answer choice E, though, this one says, the new time-saving ability to remotely control appliances is being demanded by more and more consumers. Boom. They want it. Therefore, the market share is going up. So the answer is E. Global Tech's market share began decreasing at the same time as it stopped adding new features. Answer choice D requires you to make too many assumptions as well. Maybe Global Tech's market share went down because the batteries explode on airplanes. Maybe their market share went down because they have a terrible commercial spokesperson. You know, maybe Justin Bieber was their spokesperson and he got sent back to Canada for speeding. You know, I think he did, right? Isn't Justin Bieber, didn't he get sent back to Canada? I think he's gone now. Correct answer is going to be E. Okay? So you think about that one a little bit. This one, again, we're kind of right up the middle on this question. We're kind of right at that 50th percentile. The next question we do is not the 50th percentile whatsoever. Get yourself some coffee, get ready. All right, we're going to have some fun. When we come back, we got a lot more great stuff to do. 8 minutes on the timer. We'll be right back, and then we'll do another one of these plan questions. 8 minutes. Yeah, I didn't, Nicholas, I didn't necessarily see demand right there. That's even better. If you use the word demand, I mean that takes you right here. So I just took the goal, which is to regain market share, and I just took the to control appliances there. So demand is even better. All right, just one moment. Okay, we are back from that break. Let's get going on our very next question. Let me move this right up top. What a great, before I hit the enter button there, what a great thing Nicholas had said, which is that Nicholas says, my mantras tend to be narrower than yours, which might get me into trouble. And that is the perfect thing to say, Nicholas. This is something I normally say, and I haven't said it yet today, but this is exactly right. I try not to predict the answer. So I try not to have a narrow mantra. Okay? You don't want a giant mantra. You don't want something that says like, the new cell phones are going to be great. You don't want something really, really broad, but you don't want to make it so narrow that you're not going to end up with the correct answer. Okay, so you don't want to miss that correct answer. So for this one, just phones and control appliances regain market share because that's what they said. Let's try this one. Question 12 on page 64. Now look at this. Which of the following, if true, is the best criticism of the Chinese government strategy as a method for achieving a reduction in acid rain? So first of all, we have a strategy, and we're trying to achieve something. So that's a plan, but that's criticism now. So we're no longer expecting their success, are we? Now we're criticizing. So we can see that this one is actually going to be a plan weaken question. Okay? Now this one has a bit more difficulty than what we just looked at. So be sure to get the plan, the goal, and you want to say that the plan will not achieve that goal. You're looking to weaken. That's on page 64 right there, Kim. Got page 64, question number 12. Also on the screen, I know we're jumping around, I know, but we got to take these things logically. We got to take them logically, which does not necessarily mean in order in the book. So number 12, page 64, let's weaken that plan, guys. All right, let's do 2.5 minutes on this one. Okay. All kinds of answers. We actually still need a couple of people to answer yet. Okay. Let's have a look. I think I didn't mute that. I think you guys may have... Here, let's just give you the visual as well as the audio. So there we go. That's good tea. That's hot. Okay. So, I mean, if I'm not going to hit the mute, why not just go ahead and drink it? So the plan in this case is less specific than the plan in the last question. This plan is that the Chinese national government has set aggressive environmental goals for the next 5 years. All right, that's the plan. The aggressive environmental goals set by the Chinese national government, which turns out to be an interesting thing. And then the conclusion is that they are going to try to, what? Achieve a reduction in acid rain. And it's really interesting that it's a reduction. And you could think of a reduction as any reduction. Okay? They're trying to achieve any reduction in acid rain. Does that change anybody's answer when I give you those two little hints right there? When I tell you that it's interesting that this says national government, national government makes that interesting. And when we say any reduction, okay, I think that makes it interesting as well. All right? So, if we take a look at this, what we're looking for is this mantra. The aggressive environmental goals will not achieve any reduction in acid rain. The aggressive environmental goals will not achieve any reduction in acid rain. Think about that. Which answer choice tells you that that national government can set goals and then no reduction? Last chance. We have 5 out of 11 with the correct answer right now. And that correct answer is E. Correct answer is E. Now remember, it's the national government that's setting the goals, right? Now look at what E says. Regional Chinese officials tend to ignore environmental regulations in order to meet aggressive economic requirements imposed on their regions. So the national government sets the environmental goals. The regional governments tend to ignore those goals. Therefore, nothing happens. The plan is to set goals. They do that. They set the goals. But then they're ignored, and nothing happens. Okay? So that would give us the correct answer. Now, the two big trap answers here are A and then certainly D. D is our biggest trap answer. Let's look at A and D in terms of those traps. Answer choice A, some forms of air pollution would not be affected by the suggested improvements. Okay, and then B, acid rain is also caused by other factors over which China has no control. Well, the goal is not to reduce all pollution. And A says, you know, some forms of pollution would not be affected, right? Well, the goal is not to reduce all pollution. And if you look at D, the goal is not to eliminate all acid rain. The goal is not to eliminate all acid rain. It doesn't matter if there are, you know, factors over which China has no control. Now, if we were trying to eliminate all acid rain, answer choice D would be your answer. But we're not trying to eliminate all acid rain. We're just trying to reduce. So those aren't there. And then answer choice C, the goals will be forced on every region in China. Good, right? If we're trying to achieve a goal, that's fine. If I'm trying to achieve a goal of obedient children in my high school class, and I say I'm going to punish any child that does anything wrong. And one of the answer choices said, you'll be punishing children who didn't do anything wrong. That's fine, right? If my goal is to make them docile, the more punishment, the better, right? So let them eat gruel. Punish them. So, you know, even if the regions that don't have an acid rain problem have to do this, that's even better. All right, let's take this to the next type of question. That was our plan question. So let's go to this question now. I would love for you guys to tell me what this question on page 33 is in terms of what, you know, the two-word code. Two-word code. Just read this question stem. What's my two-word code? The wind, how did you guys know the wind is from the northwest? The wind is absolutely from the northwest right now, and our temperature is a dropping. It was 50 degrees in Vermont this morning, and it's going to be 17 tonight. So, normal weekend, that's right, not northwest, NW, normal weekend. Sebastian, Matthew, David, Mrigasha, Kim, Matt, everybody with the normal weekend. You guys are on it, that's right. So, this is a normal weekend question. There actually are three ways that we can look at a weekend question. So this gives us the strengthen and the weaken. We still have assumption to go. Okay? So there are three ways that we can look at a normal weekend question. The first way that we could look at this is what's called cause and effect. We'll talk about this in 3 weeks, lesson number 9, cause and effect. A second way we can look at this is what's called a switch in terms. Guess what? We're going to look at that in 3 weeks as well. What we're going to look at today is what you can always do with a weekend question, which is this. Take the opposite of the conclusion and strengthen. Take the opposite of the conclusion and strengthen. Okay, that's what that, I had to abbreviate, I ran out of room. Take the opposite of the conclusion and strengthen. Okay, don't worry, we're going to talk about this on the next page. But as we look at this right here, go ahead and read this and tell me what the conclusion is. Read it on my board here. Don't read it in your book because I added a little bit. So tell me what the conclusion is on this. Okay, not the opposite yet, guys. Not the opposite. There you go. Some of you guys already took the opposite for me. Some of you guys already took the opposite. So it's do not buy a juicer. And it is save your money. Matthew, I totally agree. It is save your money. But remember, when you're putting down save your money, remember that he's saying save your money because juicers are pretty much on the worthless side. Okay, this guy is not a fan of the juicer. So the conclusion is do not buy a juicer, okay? So here we have the word but. Another negation. Everything before the word but, all of this stuff about complexion, digestion, preventing cancer, That is all just stated in order to be dismissed. The evidence is that there's no indication that the juice has any properties that the vegetable doesn't. And then the conclusion is, save your money, do not buy that juicer. So, for weekend questions, one approach, when you don't have cause and effect, and by the way, there's no cause and effect here. Cause and effect would be something like this. Every time Tony goes to his favorite deli and he gets sick, okay? And every time he goes to his favorite deli, he eats hot peppers. So Tony's allergic to hot peppers. That's cause and effect. The effect is observed. He always gets sick, right? The conclusion is the peppers are causing him to get sick. That's the conclusion. So cause and effect. We don't see that here. Switch in terms is whenever they're trying to make you think that two things are the same when you know that, maybe they're not. So switch in terms is when they're trying to tell you that two things are equal. We don't have anything like that here. Nobody's trying to switch any language on us here. Okay? So, this one, what we're going to do is just simply focus on the conclusion and look, turn the weaken into a strengthen, where you strengthen the opposite of the conclusion. The reason we want to do this is people often miss weaken questions just because of kind of a misfire. Because if you're reading this, do not buy a juicer, that's your conclusion, right? So if you're going, I want to weaken the conclusion that I should not buy a juicer. I need to weaken the conclusion that I should not. All I keep hearing is don't buy a juicer. Is that what you guys keep hearing? Let's weaken the conclusion that I should not buy a juicer. I keep hearing don't buy a juicer. And that's not what we want. We want to say the opposite of that. So to prevent yourself from that misfire and to allow you to focus on the right thing, okay, look to strengthen the opposite of the conclusion. In this case, it means do buy a juicer, and that's your mantra. So your mantra is the opposite of the conclusion, okay? Negate the conclusion, and then that becomes your mantra. Now, when we're negating the conclusion, we usually add the word not or take it away. So do buy a juicer, right, is now our mantra. So that's it. So let me have you guys answer the question, A through E. Pretty simple mantra right there. Put 1 minute on the timer and you can put your answers in. 1 minute. All right, bunch of correct answers there. A couple folks got caught in the trap, though. I think a couple of you focused a little bit too much on save your money. This is why I wanted to emphasize the do not buy a juicer part. The guy doesn't really care so much about you saving money. He's not like, hey, let's clip a coupon. He's not like, let's save some cash on this. He's like, juicers are crap, right? That's what this guy's saying. So answer choice C is kind of our biggest trap answer. To most people who'd be tempted to buy a home juicer, $300 would not be a major expense. That's pretty much our big-time trap answer because, listen, remember how we don't really focus on the context? One reason why we don't overly focus on the context is they set up some trap answers up there. Okay? We're just lucky that that first question we did with the sleep deprivation, we're just lucky there wasn't some kind of an answer talking about irritability and impaired decision making, you know? Because that's what happens. They set you up in the context there. So $300 just basically turns out to be kind of a coincidence. The correct answer is, in fact, going to be answer choice A. Most people find it much easier to consume a given quantity of nutrients in liquid form than to eat solid foods. If you picked answer choice B, then you just sort of got this little bit backwards. Remember, the mantra doesn't get weakened. The mantra includes the weakening. So this is what we take directly to the answer choices. Okay? So he says, don't buy a juicer. We say, do buy a juicer. Answer choice B says, don't buy a juicer. Drinking juice from home juicers is less healthy. Okay? So be careful. When you get to your mantra, there's nothing else to do. That's what the answer's got to do. That's the answer. Answer choice C, for me, doesn't tell me to buy a juicer. Doesn't tell me to buy a juicer. Right? I mean, you could tell me that, I don't know, a certain album from just a terrible rap musician is currently on sale. You know? Just somebody terrible. There was some guy on The Daily Show, and every third word in his rap was boy. Come here, boy. Shut up, boy. It was like the worst rap I'd ever heard. It was terrible. The guy's up for a Grammy. It was an awful rap song. The guy's up for a Grammy. I wouldn't give you a nickel, right? So that's what this guy's saying. If you gave me a juicer for Christmas, if you gave Nate a juicer for Christmas, he's regifting. So don't go for answer choice C on this. Okay? All right. Let's have you try that normal weekend question on your own, folks. We're on page 83, question number 18. Again, page 83, question number 18. Which of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the argument? You know it's not a plan because an argument is not a plan. Okay? So, number 18, page 83, 2 minutes. Let's weaken this thing. And there it is, folks. And there it, oh, go back. Who just changed your answer? Move it back. There, yes, and there it is. And there it is. 100% correct answers. Fantastic job, everybody. Perfect job. Correct answers all the way around. I love it because this, you know, it's a relatively straightforward question, but it's not below the 50th percentile in difficulty level or anything like that. This is the type of question you could face, right? There it is, finally, exactly. This is the type of question that you guys could face. I mean, look at this. The conclusion was not even the final sentence, was it? The conclusion was not the final clause. It's right here. It's less emphasis should be placed on mathematical principles. Less emphasis on math principles, right? Now, the conclusion is less emphasis should be placed. So to weaken this, you want to show no less emphasis. Please remember that the opposite of less is not more. It's less than or equal to, right? The opposite of x is less than y is not x is more than y, it's x is greater than or equal to y. So the opposite of less is no less or not less. So no less emphasis should be placed on math principles. If we look at answer choice A, the effective use of computer programs that provide solutions to math problems in engineering requires an understanding of fundamental math principles. So you're still using the computers, as they say in the evidence. You're still using the computers, but you need the math principles in order to do those. So when you weaken, you allow the evidence to stand, and it's the conclusion that you question. Okay? The evidence is the computers are helping with the engineering, but the conclusion is no fundamental math, but we say yes to the math. Okay? The other answer choices go in the wrong direction. I'm not sure which way answer choice E goes. The engineering curriculum already requires engineering students to be familiar with a variety of computer programs. But what does that have to say about fundamental math principles? It doesn't say we need them. Answer choice E probably goes the wrong direction. Answer choice A is the one. All right, so that's going to take us to the next question type, which is the inference. So up to now, we've been going down to Mantra Town, right? We've been going all the way down to Mantra Town. We've always had a mantra. We had a mantra for plan questions, both strengthen the plan and weaken. We had a mantra for normal questions, normal strengthen, normal weaken. An inference doesn't have a mantra. The reason why an inference doesn't have a mantra is you're going to have to be spending some time, and the holidays are coming. Some of you are going to spend some time with some relatives that may not be your favorite people, and that's just how it goes, right? You just do it, right? Or you don't. Or you call them and say, look, I'm not coming this year. You know, you could do that. What I did is I moved more than 1,000 miles away, and I am 3 hours from a major airport. So I just made it very difficult to get to me. So, you know, that's one way you can do it. But you sometimes have to spend time with people that aren't your favorite. That's the inference question. Now we've got to spend time with those answer choices, right? So far, the answer choices have been the least amount of time. But for an inference, here's what you got to do. So for a correct answer for an inference, the correct answer must be true. Okay? So what that means is that incorrect answers could be false. And this is the key. Inference questions are great candidates for you to do process of elimination. Inference questions, process of elimination. Inference questions are approached differently than strengthen or weaken. There's no mantra, right? With inference questions, you read the stimulus, you understand the scope, and then you move to the answers to eliminate. So with inference questions, it's a lot more time with the actual answer choices. So let's look at this bonus question, not in your books, folks. We got another bonus question right here. Another bonus. That's why I'm going to send you all these slides. Don't worry about it. The slides are coming absolutely 100% because some of these things are not even in your book. So you want to look back at them, they're going to be right here. All right. Which of the following conclusions is best supported? Look at this question stem. Which of the following conclusions? This is one of the best ways to let you know you have an inference question. Because if the conclusion is down here, that's a following conclusion. The conclusion is down here. That's a following conclusion. What do we know about all normal questions? The conclusion is up here, right? For a normal question, the conclusion's up here. So as soon as we know that the conclusion is below the question stem, that's an inference every time. When you see the word following conclusion, that's an inference, and there is no doubt. There's no ifs, there's no ands, there's no buts. The conclusion down here makes an inference. So that means process of elimination. I'm going to have you guys read this stimulus, and then we're going to go through and we're going to eliminate answer choices, and we're going to do that based on two things. Number one, out of scope. With inference questions, if one of the answer choices talks about something that's not really directly addressed here, then it's out of scope. This doesn't work for strengthen. This doesn't work for weaken. Normal questions, the correct answer could seem like it's out of scope, and it could still be the correct answer. But with an inference, what's here has to come here. Okay? And the second thing we do is we eliminate predictions. All right, go ahead and read this. And then I'll give you like 30 seconds to read this, and we'll start in on these answer choices. All right, here we go. You guys ready? Answer choice E is not the correct answer. Can you give me a 1 or a 2, please, in the chat box, okay? We know answer choice E is not correct. Hydroponic farming, farming without soil, would solve the U.S. land erosion problem. 1 or a 2 on this one, okay? It certainly is out of scope. I'm going to give you that. It certainly is. Is it a prediction as well? Would solve the land erosion problem? Only answer choice E is both. There you go, Matt. Answer choice E is both. For the rest of them, I'm not going to do that to you. But this is a prediction and it's out of scope, right? It's as if I've been talking about, it's as if I've been talking about football, and I suddenly say to you, the San Antonio Spurs will make the NBA playoffs this year, guaranteed. Not only is that a prediction, but it's off topic. It's out of scope. So, I've got two things going wrong here, right? LeBron James will also make the playoffs because what? It's the NBA, and the NBA what? Makes sure LeBron James is in the playoffs every year. Repeat after me. Let's look at answer choice D. Answer choice D right here. What do we got? One or a two? One or a two for answer choice D. If 5 out of 6 of all American farmers practice no-till, the U.S. would have enough ag products to meet domestic demand for several hundred years. Okay? Now, this is definitely number 2. Sebastian, Matthew, Amanda, Nicholas, Mrgasha. It is answer choice D here because check it out, folks. This is like me not saying that the San Antonio Spurs will make the playoffs this year. This is like me saying the San Antonio Spurs will make the playoffs in the year 2112 or something. You know, will there be basketball? We don't know these things. That's a giant prediction several hundred years from now. Really? After the aliens take over and are using us for their food supply? Let's look at answer choice C. Also not the right answer. Agricultural industries that do not require plowing, such as dairy and chicken farms, are not affected by topsoil erosion. What do you got for me on this one? Sebastian, David, Mrgasha, Matthew, it is, in fact, answer choice, number 1, out of scope. Way out of scope, right? Dairy and chicken farms, out of scope. So we got A and B. And I'm going to have you guys put the right answer now into the poll. I'm opening the poll up, so look at those. Figure out which one is the correct answer, please. A or B. Correct answer is B. You guys, oh, look at all you guys moving. Everybody had the right answer, and then suddenly there was a movement. It's not A. Now, I know why some of you moved away from B, but let's talk about A first. Although the advance of farming technology has made no-till available to wealthy farmers, such methods are financially impractical for many American farmers. Do we know how much no-till agriculture costs? Right? This is out of scope. This is absolutely out of scope. We have no idea with answer choice A. We have no idea what this costs. Now, some of you moved away from B because B looks like what? Type it into the chat box for me. What does B look like? Why did people move away from B? What does it seem to be? It looks like a prediction. That's right. It walks like an Egyptian. That's an old song. It looks like a prediction. Yeah, exactly. Walk like an Egyptian. Looks like a prediction. See, we could do some music based on this. We could do this. That's the 1980s Walks Like an Egyptian. You guys probably don't know that one. If the United States does not utilize means that replenish or reuse exhausted soil, it must eventually find other ways. That totally sounds like a prediction, and it's not. Because if I was going to say, if I flip this coin right here, it's going to be heads, that's a prediction. If I flip this coin, it's going to be tails, that's a prediction. But what if I said this? If I choose to flip this coin, because maybe I don't, it will either come up heads or tails. Okay, you guys with me? That's not a prediction. That's what's called listing the possibilities. If I say the Kansas City Chiefs will win Sunday night, if I say the Chiefs will lose Sunday night, those are predictions. If I say something like this, either the Chiefs will win, lose, or tie on Sunday night, or they won't play the game. That's all the possibilities, isn't it? No game, win, lose, tie. That's it. So I'm not making a prediction. Okay, so the correct answer is going to be B because that's not a prediction. It just says, yo, we either have to replenish the soil, reuse it, or do something else. Well, that's just self-evident. All right, let's do Page 51, question number 8. Let's do page 51, question number 8. Which of the following can be properly inferred? Properly inferred. Oh, wow, that sounds like an inference, doesn't it? Which of the following can be properly inferred? So we have an inference here. Okay? So remember, you can read through this and you can eliminate, but there's one other thing you can, you know what? Hold off on that. We're going to do this bonus question first. I got to do all 3 inference questions. I have to. I can't live with myself. So let's do this one before we do that one. Which of the following statements draws the most reliable conclusion? Again, that means the conclusion is down here. That's an inference, okay? Let's have you guys look at this one. 2 minutes on this bonus question, then we'll do page 51. 2 minutes right here, then page 51. All right, let's start this one out. I tell you that the inference question, you must focus on the answer choices, and then we cover up the answers with a pop-up. Let's start with E. If Saharan atmospheric waves could reach the Caribbean, hurricane formation would increase even more in that region. What do you guys say on answer choice E? Is that a 1 or a 2? Is that a 1 or a 2? That's a prediction. That's right, Nicholas. That's right, David. That's a 2. That if Saharan, we don't know what would happen if Saharan atmospheric waves could reach the Caribbean. Maybe it would disrupt what they got going on. You see what I mean? So that's not going to do it. Answer choice D. More hurricanes would form if there were, you see this if-then thing? More hurricanes would form if. So with answer choice D, that one as well. With answer choice C, also a prediction. A reduction in lightning storms in the Ethiopian highlands would not reduce the Atlantic hurricane season. So those are all three predictions. Now we have A and B. And if we look at answer choice B, tropospheric lightning storms do not actually play a role in Atlantic hurricane formation. This one is not a prediction, not out of scope. It's just sort of wrong, right? Answer choice B is just sort of wrong. Yeah, exactly, David, conclusively. Look up here, guys. This says tropospheric lightning storms don't play a role. Well, if you look up here, the tropospheric lightning storms, okay, create atmospheric waves across the Sahara. And those waves are so powerful that scientists claim that these are conclusively linked to Atlantic hurricanes. So let's say that again. Tropospheric storms create atmospheric waves that scientists claim are conclusively linked to Atlantic hurricanes. So it's sort of like the opposite of B, right? B's not out of scope. It's not a prediction. It's just eh. So that leaves us with answer choice A. Now, how do we know? I'm looking for one word, and it starts with a C. How do we know that Ethiopian lightning storms are not the only factor that affects the formation of hurricanes? It's kind of a big word, and it's hard to type. But I'm looking for one word. Well, no, not in here. Not in here. Up here. One word up here, right? How do we know that Ethiopian lightning storms cannot be the only factor? What is it that we know? Ethiopian lightning storms cannot be the only factor because of the Caribbean, man. The Caribbean. Ethiopian lightning storms in the Caribbean. That's terrible. Somebody just put me out of my misery. That was terrible. But yeah, the Caribbean, right? So the Caribbean, where these atmospheric waves could never reach. Okay? So they can't be the only factor because they don't reach the Caribbean and they have even more activity, right? There must be some other factor, at least in the Caribbean, because they don't reach there and there's even more activity. So correct answer is going to be answer choice A. All right. Now on page 51. You can do this question the way we've done so far, which is to say straight up process of elimination, or you can do this question with the transitive property. Remember that if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, that A is greater than C, right? You can actually, on some inference questions, 25% of the time, something like that, on some inference questions, you can do the transitive property. So let's look at number 8 on page 51. 2 minutes. All right, great answers, a bunch of right answers. Let's go transitive property first, please. Transitive property first. So we can tell, and you're not allowed predictions, right? You can't talk about the future unless they do. If they talk about the future, then you can, right? So here's what they say. Unless the polls are grossly inaccurate, Shiro's in, right? So if those polls are good, if the polls are good, therefore Shiro. Well, what do we know about Shiro? If Shiro wins, McGinnis will be appointed, right? So if the polls are good, Shiro wins, therefore McG. Can I call him McG? Therefore McG is appointed. The polls are good, Shiro wins, McG is appointed, and if McG is appointed, if McGinnis is appointed, then polls are good, Shiro wins, McGinnis is appointed, then he's less qualified. And that's answer choice E. If the polls are a good indication, someone less qualified will be appointed. And there it is. When you get a bunch of statements that give you like if, then, put them together and see what you can get. Okay? So that's going to do it. Now let's also do our typical process of elimination. Remember, out of scope, A, if the polls are grossly inaccurate, I can stop right now. You guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I can stop right now. If the polls are grossly inaccurate, well, you know what? We don't know what's going to happen if the polls are grossly inaccurate, right? Shiro could win by more. We have no idea. We only know what happens if the polls are not gross. Answer choice B, McGinnis will be appointed only if. Listen very carefully. Just because you have one scenario where something does happen, that doesn't make it the only scenario. Okay? That doesn't make it the only scenario. So in this case, we have one scenario where McGinnis is appointed, and that's if Shiro wins. We have the scenario where if Shiro wins, McGinnis is appointed. Okay? But that doesn't have to be the only scenario. Shiro could lose, and McGinnis could still be appointed by the opponent. So answer choice B is going the wrong direction. C, either Shiro will win or Stauning appointed. We don't know that Stauning has any ability to be appointed ahead of this, right? Or desire. We know nothing about that. We only know Stauning's more qualified. D, McGinnis is not an architect and has not been on the Planning Commission for 15 years. Well, we know that McGinnis is less qualified, but we don't know why. The word "and" makes a big difference here as well, of course, because we don't know that he's both not an architect as well as not been on the Planning Committee. It could be one or the other, just as an example. Correct answer is E. All right, let's, as Tupac says, let's keep it rocking, because California knows how to party. Let's do assumption. Assumption questions. So the A in SWAM. So now we're done with our normal questions, strengthen, weaken, assumption. Most useful is going to be lesson 9. Okay? We've done inference and we've done plan. We'll definitely get to boldface, and we might even get a paradox in. I know we only have 20 minutes left, but it's not going to take us too long. Let's look at assumption. This is going to be on page, hold on, let me tell you. We're going to be on page 73. This sounds correct, right? Can anybody give me any problems that might, so with an assumption, you get 2 ways to go. If you can spot a gap, let's go back to the early 1990s. Vanilla Ice. If you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it, right? So if you can point out a gap in this logic, one way to work an assumption question is to block the gap, okay? An assumption question, if you can spot a gap in logic, you can block it. It's the opposite of a weakened question. With a weakened question, if you spot a gap in logic, you just mention it. With an assumption, if there's a gap in logic, you pave over it. Okay? Can anybody give me a problem here? Bill received the greatest number of votes in the school election, so he will become the new president. Can anybody tell me a problem Anything that might keep Bill. Anything that might keep Bill from getting that. Okay, so Nicholas says, is he running for president? Not running for president. So maybe Nicholas is, that's it, Kim. He isn't, that's it, Sebastian. Okay, good. Look at Matthew. Okay, great. Other thoughts here. Isn't running for president. Okay, he received the most votes. Is he already president? What a great one. How can you become the new president if you're already president? Right? That's really an interesting one. That's really interesting. I got two more. Nobody's going to give me this one. Nobody's going to give me the one I'm thinking of that everybody gives me. He received the most votes in 2016, and yet people are still chanting, "Lock her up," right? She received the most votes in 2016, yet people are still chanting, "Lock her up," right? What am I talking about? Most votes loses, right? Most votes loses. Some people say the Electoral College, right? He received the most votes. That doesn't mean he wins. That doesn't mean he wins because he got the most votes. The most votes doesn't mean you win. Okay, and then number 3, this is really interesting. Think about this, guys. Just because you win the election doesn't mean that you will become the new president, right? So he wins but does not serve. He wins but does not serve. Okay, are you guys with me? He could lose with the most votes. Maybe he's not running for president. Maybe he wins but doesn't take office. Maybe he's not the new president, which is really good, Nicholas. That's one that nobody ever points out. That's a good one. So with an assumption question, if you block any of these, that would be a correct answer. So, for example, the most votes always wins. That would be an assumption answer that would block this. He is running for president. That would block this. Whoever wins the election will take office would block this. You cannot have a repeat president would block this. Or Bill is not president right now would block it. Any of those. Okay? So that's one way to do it. Spot the flaw and block it. That's one way. A second way is to negate. A second way is to negate the answer choices. With an assumption question, you're looking for an answer choice. Listen to me now. You're looking for an answer choice that you absolutely need. Okay? An answer choice that you need. So if you take away that answer choice, you should be in trouble, right? So when you take away an answer and it weakens the argument, that's your correct assumption answer. So look, Bill was not running for an office other than president. Let's negate this. Bill was running for an office other than president. Oh boy, that weakens my conclusion. So if this is answer choice A, this would be a correct answer. We need to say that Bill was not running for an office other than president. It becomes obvious when you negate it. Okay, B, the electoral system does not include, let's say it does, a provision by which the candidate with the most votes could lose. Okay? So either one of these would be a correct answer. When you negate the answers, the one that weakens when negated, that's your assumption. So you got two choices on this. Number 15 on page 73. Anytime they use the word assumption, there's only one thing it can be. It's a normal assumption. Anytime they say assumption, it's a normal assumption. Okay? So you have two choices. If you spot a gap, fill it, right? Block it. Or negate the answers and see what you got. So here you go, a couple minutes, number 15 on page 73. All right, let's look at this one. We have it come down to the two answers that I wanted it to come down to. The first thing you can know about an assumption question is you can use the phrase out of scope to eliminate answers on assumption. Okay? So let's look at what we're talking about. Let's get the conclusion, the evidence, and so forth. So the conclusion is that ancestors of modern humans lived in Western Asia 2 million to 1.5 million years ago. Okay? The evidence is the bones of that ancestor were found in those ancient lake bottom sediments. The background information is that, in fact, the lake was there during the right time period. The lake was 2 million to 1.5 million years ago. That's the right time period. We got the bones in those sediments. Therefore, we've got the people there. All right? Now, maybe you spotted a gap. Let's say you didn't. Answer choices A, B, and D are all sort of out of scope here because our evidence is the bones in the sediments. There were not other lakes. Let's negate that. Let's say there were other lakes. Doesn't make a difference, does it? The lake contained fish that they could use for food. What if it didn't contain fish? Does that make any difference here? You're sort of informally negating it by thinking about what happens if we live without it. D, the lake was deep enough a person could drown in it. What if it wasn't? Is the only way for bones to get into a lake that somebody drowns there, right? So that leaves us with C and E. Let's negate both of these. You ready? The lava that lay under the lake bottom sediments did contain human fossil remains. So the lava did have human fossil remains. This would mean the people were there before 2 million years, right? So people were there before 2 million years ago. Let's look at E. The bones were not already in the sediments when the lake disappeared. What does that mean? The bones were not already in the sediments when the lake disappeared. This would mean that they got there later than 1.5 million years ago. Which one is more damning to our argument? Is it worse to say the people were there before 2 million? Or is it worse to say they didn't get there until after the 1.5? Let me put it a different way. If I said to you that I lived in this house in August, would it be more damning to my argument to say that I was already here in July? If I was already here in July, does that mean that I'm not here in August? Or is it more of a problem to say I didn't move in until October? You see what I mean? The correct answer is going to be E. It's more of a problem for the bones to show that they were too late than too early. If people got there too early, this only says they lived there between 2 million and 1.5 million. Now listen, here's what would make answer choice C correct. If this said, therefore, modern humans were not in Western Asia until 2 million years ago, that would make the difference. But that's not what this says, okay? So correct answer is not answer choice C, but is answer choice E. Now, there's another way we could do this besides negating the answers, and that is to spot the gap. And here's the gap I spotted. The bones were found in the sediments, but when were they put there? The sediments are the right time period. The bones are in the sediments. Seems good, right? But when did the bones get there? The sediments are the right time frame, but maybe somebody dug down and put the bones in. Right? So that takes us to answer choice E. So with an assumption, either spot a gap and fill it, or secondarily, if you're not going to spot the gap and fill it, negate the answer choices. And the one that weakens when negated is the answer. You think about that for a little bit, and let's jump on to little roles in boldface, which is number 11. It's page 59. This is what roles in boldface looks like, folks. We've got one sentence in bold, we've got a second sentence in bold, okay? Now, let's read these and then let's ask ourselves 3 quick questions. There are those who complain that municipal libraries are outdated and unnecessary. These same people object to tax dollars spent funding municipal libraries. However, these people are missing out on the simple pleasure reading a great book. Taken this way, libraries are truly wonderful resources worthy of public funding. Okay? So, here's what you want to ask yourself. Number 1, is there any clear role for each of the 2 portions? Is something a conclusion? Is it evidence? Is it a prediction? So you want to figure out what the role is for each portion. Number 2, and that's where most people stop. That's where most people stop right there. But that's a mistake, because you're going to see that many answer choices relate to the second and third ones here. Number 2, how does each boldface relate to the other? Specifically, do they support? Do they undermine? Are they going the same direction? Are they against each other? Okay? So that's the second question to ask yourself. With each boldface question you come to, ask yourself the role for each of the 2 portions and then how they relate to each other. And then finally, how does the boldface relate to the conclusion if there is one? Okay? So, the role they play, how they relate to each other, how they relate to the argument's conclusion. Well, let's look at this. These same people object to the tax dollars spent. These same people object. So this right here looks like it's some sort of a point of view. This looks like it's some sort of an opinion. That's some sort of point of view, that's some sort of opinion right there. Okay? Now, then we have the second one, taken this way, libraries are truly wonderful resources. This looks like an opinion, right? Or the conclusion of the argument. Because the author's opinion is a conclusion. Now, how do these relate to each other? These 2 opinions, these 2 points of view, how do they relate to each other? Well, look what you've got. Got a little negation right there, don't you? However. So this is telling me right now that these 2 points of view are opposed, right? However, these people are missing out on a simple point. Clearly, there's some disagreement here. So, here's what we've got. As I go to the answer choices, this is what I'm looking at. We've got an opinion or a point of view up here, which is contrasted to a second opinion, which might be the author's conclusion, if it says that. So, point of view opposed to another point of view or to the conclusion. So now we've got ourselves a mantra here. A, the first is a generalization accepted by the author as true. No, the author says that you're missing out, so it's not A. B, the first is evidence that supports one of 2 contradictory points of view. No, this is not evidence that supports. It just says they object. It doesn't say they're right to object. It doesn't say they're correct. The first is a commonly held point of view. Okay. The second is support. No. The second is not support. The second is not support. You see how simple that is right now? We're basically seeing that the 2 of these things are against each other, and that's getting rid of a couple of answers right there. We're seeing that the first part is not evidence. That's getting rid of an answer right there. Now we have D and we have E. Now look at D. Wait, what portion is the first point of view? The bold portion, David. These same people object to the tax dollars spent. So their point of view is they're objecting to the tax dollars. They don't want other people to be able to read books. They like their tax dollars going to things like fraud and corporate greed and some things like that. Don't you spend your tax dollars on children and books. So that's the first point of view right there. Libraries are socialist. Look at answer choice D. The first is one of 2 contradictory points of view. The second is the other point of view, right? There you go. That's right, Enron. The first is one of 2 contradictory points of view. Yes. The second is the other point of view. Touchdown. The answer is D. This is a point of view, this is a point of view, and they are opposed to each other. You can't go wrong. People pick answer choice E, though. Because they don't understand it, and that's why. The first concedes a consideration that weighs against the viewpoint of the author. The second is that viewpoint. Now, this part's fine. The second is that viewpoint. In other words, the author's conclusion. That's fine. The first concedes a consideration? No. The author doesn't concede anything. The author doesn't concede a consideration. The author says that these people are missing out. To concede a consideration would be this. Okay, my conclusion is that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be the #1 seed in football. Okay, that's my conclusion. Now, I might say something like that, but I understand that it's going to be difficult for them to beat the Seattle Seahawks, that the LA Chargers have a good chance. You know, I'm conceding some things here. But I still think my point is going to come around. The author doesn't concede. The author says these people are greedy and they're crazy. They want to close down the libraries. They're wrong. He doesn't concede anything. Don't pick an answer choice because you don't understand it. Pick an answer choice you do understand, like answer choice D. Okay? An answer choice you do understand, like answer choice D. All right, we're going to just push it right through. I got a couple of minutes here that I can make this happen. Let's explain the paradox real quick. Like plan and strategy questions, some are not arguments but are paradoxes. Okay? So not arguments but paradoxes. Here's a paradox for you. By the way, this is going to be page 69. Page 69. Okay? Andy Reid may be horrible in the playoffs. He's never had a quarterback he could trust. Scientists have discovered that lead paint causes an array of health problems, particularly in young children. Yet these same scientists have recommended that lead paint not be removed. How could lead paint be terrible for young children, and yet scientists recommend that it not be removed? Isn't that crazy? We need something to allow both of those things to stand, right? And so this is what I call the surprising fact. The surprising fact is the one that you don't immediately understand. How could these people recommend that lead paint not be removed when it's so dangerous, right? How could that be true? Maybe removing lead paint from walls disperses a great deal of lead dust, which is more easily ingested. You see that? So maybe the scientists say don't remove the lead paint because removing it is worse. The correct answer should explain the surprising fact. If we look at question 14 on page 69, they often give you the surprising fact in the question stem. Most helps to explain why raisins contain more iron per calorie than grapes. Before you even read the stimulus, you know what you're trying to explain because the question stem says it. For question 14, we need to know why raisins contain more iron per calorie than grapes. Okay? So that's iron per calorie, and they contain more. Okay, why? Right? Read the stimulus here. Raisins are made by drying grapes in the sun. Although some of the sugar in the grapes is caramelized, in the process nothing is added. However, the only thing removed from the grapes is water that evaporates, and water contains no calories or nutrients. The fact that raisins contain more iron per food calorie than grapes is therefore puzzling. You need an answer choice that explains why raisins contain more iron per calorie. Now, as we go through these answer choices, folks, we're going to be brutal. We're going to be absolutely brutal. You ready? A, since grapes are bigger than raisins, it takes bunches of grapes to provide the same as a handful of raisins. That has nothing to do with iron per calorie. That's iron per handful. That can't be right. That doesn't explain this. Okay, B, by the way, the simple fact was that raisins are grapes, right? And the surprising fact is that there's more iron per calorie. How could they be the same thing and one of them has more iron per calorie? It's weird. That's what you have to explain. B, caramelized sugar cannot be digested, so its calories do not count toward the food calorie content. I have no idea what that means, but it said something about calories and iron, so let's hold on. C, the body can absorb iron and nutrients more quickly from grapes than raisins. We're not talking about absorbing iron. We're talking about containing. D, raisins but not grapes are available year-round. Can I stop right now, please? Raisins are often eaten in combination with other foods. So, the correct answer is B. And here's why. If caramelized sugar cannot be digested, and if its calories don't count, then you lower the denominator. One way to make a bigger fraction is to make a smaller denominator, right? So the correct answer is going to be B. If the calories don't count, but you have the same amount of iron, you have a bigger fraction by having a smaller denominator. That is the paradox, okay? The surprising fact is that raisins contain more iron per calorie. That becomes your mantra, explaining the surprising fact, which is often listed in the question stem. And that's going to, again, be answer choice B. All right, guys, we did strengthen, weaken, assumption. And we did boldface, inference, paradox, and plan. I'm going to put some links up into the chat box right now. And the link that I'm going to put up first is the videos of the remaining lesson problems. We skipped some problems and replaced them. So here are the other lesson problems. Okay, the lesson problems that we skipped. And here, yeah, that's going to be it. So as soon as I get a chance after my GRE class is done, which I start my GRE class in 20 minutes. When my GRE class is done, I'm going to send you these notes right here because this is obviously stuff that's off book, so you guys need this. Now, here's my question for you. Are you able to see critical reasoning a little bit differently than you did 3 hours and 10 minutes ago? That's my question for you. And my second question is, who's ready for some algebra tomorrow? Do that skill builder. If you're not ready for some algebra tomorrow, check that skill builder. Don't do the lesson, but do the skill builder, okay? So, critical reasoning today, lots of fun. Algebra tomorrow, lots to be done, okay? So, we'll see you guys tomorrow.